to do roll call again since it just started recording?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, may I have the roll call again, please?
Yes. Chair Hill.
Here.
Councilwoman Becky. Here. Mr. Esquada.
Here.
Mr. Lavasar.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We'll now move into comments from the floor by the public. Do we have anyone signed in for public comment?
No public comment at this time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll now move into approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes, staff, to the agenda? Not seeing any. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
To approve the agenda as submitted.
Thank you, Ms. Barbie, seconded by Mr. Squaga. Any questions on the motion from the board? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. And that motion passes unanimously. We'll now move to the minutes. Are there any changes that board members have to the minutes? I'm not seeing that anyone does. I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Squaga, looking for a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Avasar. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. We'll now move into items E1. This is our present CEO goals and objectives for fiscal year 24-25. And Mr. Larangetta, please take it away.
Madam Chair, good afternoon, everybody. Mike Larragetta for the record. So for E1, after discussion with Council, Ms. Rizak, what I'm going to be presenting today is to go over the approved fiscal year 24-25 goals. I'll then update the committee on where we are pacing through either March or April, depending on the individual goal. And then also provide the committee the forecasted outcome through June 30 on where we're going to finish. That works for everybody?
That's great.
Okay, great. Jumping right into the goals, the first goal was the group room night goal, which the board approved to be at 261,122. In terms of pacing, right now, we are at 251,596, 96% of goal in March 31st, 2025. Based on conversations Mr. McGinnis has had with his team, they are forecasting to finish the year, this fiscal year, at 270,425, or a 104%.
What page is this in our packet?
Sorry, I was just looking at the.
8? No. 3.
Mike, do you want them to look at pacing? The pacing doc?
Yeah, which one?
That's probably the best.
I think so.
Yes.
So 23, start there. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to get to my numbers.
Okay,
Yes, 23, I think is correct.
okay,
Thanks. Mary.
pacing, thank you. Now the numbers match up. Thank you very much. No worries.
Okay, great, there we go.
And board members, just chime in if you have questions. We can make this a working session if you like.
Any questions on goal 1? Okay, I mean,
You know, Mike, real
Yes,
quick,
sir.
just, and not so much on this, cause I don't think, do we break out new and a rebook?
we do.
Is it tied into?
We didn't do it for today, but we're happy to provide that
Okay.
information. You bet.
No, and I'm not saying one's more valuable than another, it's, cause it's.
But it's relevant information.
But it just tells you kind of what we have.
Yeah, and we can even, if the board requests, we can break it down even further by market. So we can go percentage of new or reintroduced by territory.
Okay.
So whether the southeast is generally performing very high on new business, because it's a still, relatively new market for the destination, versus Northern California might be more repeat.
Okay.
So we can do that as well.
Mike, with that, to follow up on that, would that also correlate to marketing, to our marketing efforts? Not only our regional salespeople that are, booking, but what kind of dollars we're spending and time we're spending in different markets to kind of correlate to, are we seeing a return?
I'll let Christina answer that, but I think the simple answer is yes, we can.
We can break it out. Yep. Yeah, I would think the two should
Yeah, especially with like our air service markets, we break it out and communicate our spend to the airport and RAS, gives some of the members of the board know on RAS. But yeah, we break that out and really track how much we're spending and what we're pursuing.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, goal number 2, which is actually 3 goals that all falls under the marketing department. The first 2, Christina will speak to if there's any questions or if I can answer, and then Mr. McDonald will, and speak to the media placements if there's any questions. So the paid media engagement goal was to achieve an average paid media engagement rate of 5% or higher by the end of the fiscal year. This is an estimate of a 2% increase over fiscal year 24. In terms of where we are pacing, as of March 31st, 2025, the team has done an unbelievable job, and we are at 16.6% engagement rate. And based on the last 2 months, we are forecasting to finish at 17%. Questions on engagement? Okay, great. The next marketing goal under Christina was partner referrals. The goal is to achieve a partner referral per user of 0.14 or higher at the end of the fiscal year. Estimate 20% increase over fiscal year 24. As of April 30th, 2025, we are at 14.1%. So by the skin of our teeth, we are pacing a goal and projected to finish at 14%, which was the goal target for the fiscal year. Any questions on?
Madam Chair, Mike and Christina, so how do we get those referrals as close to our goals that I mean, is this just historical data that we know through these partner referral programs? This is generally that target.
So partner referrals, what that is of all the users that come to our website, how many are clicking off, how many we are sending to our partners around the community? So if they click to a hotel or a museum, so those all count to partner referrals. We are bringing in the traffic and then we're sending them to our partners. So this is a 14% of every user who comes to our website is going to a partner. This honestly was a very ambitious goal for us this year, but we are looking at hitting it.
I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah.
What did we hit last time? I mean, that's such a phenomenal patch through for our, our properties around the area, but what did we hit last time?
Last year, it was around 11 and 12%. So we went
Yeah.
up to 14 this past year.
It's great.
Okay, thank you, sir. The third goal under marketing was earned media placements. The goal was to secure 250 or more earned media placements by the end of the fiscal year. This is an estimated 10% increase over prior year fiscal year 24. As of April 30th, the anticipated, well, let me give you a real number. Through March 31st, we were at 168. Through April, the number is anticipated at 180, and we're projected to finish at 215. We had a tremendous amount of lift from the indoor track. What was the final balance one, right? You earlier said we're here.
I know, right?
But the track alone produced,
I think over 45 stories locally.
so big lift. And we do anticipate to again see a lot of support for the track in terms of media placements because of the number of meets, the new meets, the conference championships, but I don't think we will see quite that lift we saw this year.
And Madam Chair,
Yeah.
these earned media efforts, because we had 2 different partnerships with our local media firm and our national.
That's correct.
Who pushed this target?
Both.
Both of them.
It's a combination of
Can we get a breakdown on
local,
local
national.
versus national?
That-
I'd love to see that, yeah.
Let me know for the record, right now pacing through roughly April, we have about 88 national placements and about 70, I can't remember the exact number, about 78 local right now. With a couple months to go.
And Madam Chair, Ben, can I also, I mean, can we get like our perception on the earned media being like valuable, positive articles about RSCBA versus, I mean, I don't know, I
Respectfully,
can't
we're
remember if we've had a negative article.
Yeah,
We don't
We
count.
don't count those.
Nope.
Those aren't counted.
Correct.
Technically, media,
It
right?
should be.
They are,
Right,
but
it should
we
be-
don't count them.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well, we don't take credit. We don't take credit for those, and we also don't take credit for mentions. So there's been well over 300 mentions in the local media.
Sure.
And if it's not something that we efforted, that we put in front of people, that we were working with local media on directly, we don't take credit for that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Any other questions on? Great, thank you. Goal number 3, leisure room nights. This is Mr. Jimenez's area. The goal was to produce 634,110 cash hotel room nights. As of March 31st, we were at 519,190 to be at 82% to goal. Art is projecting that we will finish at 688,456, would put us at 108% for the fiscal year. Any questions on tourism leisure room nights?
Awesome.
And so much of that, I mean, Art and his team do a fabulous job and it works very closely with all of our stakeholders within Washoe County. As I think most of you know, so many of those room nights are produced based on demand and occupancy forecast and what we don't control pricing, of course, and so the hotels really determine as we say, turn on the faucets or turn them off to generate production in these segments. So it's, even though they do a fabulous job of encouraging co-op and marketing programs, if the Petro decides to turn off Expedia for a month, it can really impact the room night production. So don't turn them off, please.
We tried that.
You tried that once.
But on that note too, and again, you're right, I mean, it's both, right? It's what Art's doing on his end, the properties. On that select service we talked about this, they're crushing it right now, right? And didn't we say they had an uptick of about 18%?
Yeah, I'll let Art speak to the numbers, but where
And
we,
that would be feeding into it, correct?
it would,
Which
so
is great.
where we see the big lift through the select service, limited service properties is through the GDS, which stands for the Global Distribution System. That is the connectivity between a travel agent or a business travel account to the property. Drives a higher ADR, yes, there's a commission, but it's up.
So it's up considerably, we'll probably do about 200,000 room nights this year in this fiscal. I don't have a percentage right, but I'll get that to you. And it's a higher ADR to Mike's point, and it's also 90% of the business is midweek.
Yeah, that's what, I just think educating the full board of, there's areas where you put your effort into. And I think that also I'm assuming their stay might be a little longer, could be.
It's about 2,
Two,
depends on the
okay, something like that.
GDS, on which brand, but we have robust programming behind it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's like almost half, which is where we are seeing the flights too, is business travel.
Yeah,
Really way up,
Those are all individual corporate business travelers.
right?
it's great.
Any other questions on leisure sets? Okay, great, moving right along. As they always say, all good things must come to an end, so we will go to goal 4, our facility revenues. The goal approved by the board was to achieve $6,435,595 in total revenue at our 4 managed and/or owned facilities, the RSCC, the NBS, REC, and the Reno Sparks Livestock Event Center. In terms of pace, Renee broke it down by facility, so I can go into the individuals or I can just share where we're expected to finish. The overall projection to finish by the end of the fiscal year is at 5,665,774 or 88% to goal. The majority, if not all of that deficit, unfortunately is tied directly to the Reno Event Center. Our food service provider, Aramark, is going to come in a little over, and Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe just a little over $1 million down in revenue to their budget.
According to current projections.
So they are right now actually operating at a slight loss.
Right.
Versus a projected budget of $1 million in profit. So that's, and that was due to, to be transparent, poor budgeting and looking at prior actuals within that facility and not truly looking at the business levels that were in that building and budgeting off of those, what was actually booked. And then concerts, we rely heavily on Caesars Entertainment to fulfill the concerts in that are in that building as a standalone. Obviously, this board, our board approved for us to take risk moving forward at the REC. So we have, and you'll see when we provide you the goals for next fiscal year, we have budgeted those numbers into the budget, which is aggressive, but we made a commitment to this board. So we want to get to that number, whether it's us as a standalone combination efforts of co-pros or what Caesars does on their own within the building. So
Mike, is that $1 million negative on Airmark only for REC?
it's total, but
It's total for all
it is
properties.
the million, it is, I think 900,000 in the RC is a standalone, right? Isn't it?
About year nine.
Yeah, majority of it is in the real
I
estate.
mean, I'm looking at the breakdown, it says mostly REC, but it's a total negative 1 million.
Correct, they budgeted to remit $1 million to us in net profit, and they're currently $20,000 of loss. So there's no net profit generated whatsoever at this point.
Well, then we go down to back to facilities and I don't know if I'm getting off track here, but with facilities, we anticipated this amount of money revenue, but it's not, that's one piece of the puzzle that challenges us, but the bigger challenge is that our operating, the facilities are always in the red. They're always negative because they cost more to operate them, just to operate than revenue we can charge to bring in, but yet it brings in the conventions and the groups. So we've got to have the facilities, but they will never run at, we're not planning on making money on them other than the fact that if we say that we do, because they're bringing the conventions here. I mean, it's one of those, the facilities
Yeah.
themselves won't generate, and now we've got a little bit more compounded problem when what they anticipate to bring in from Aramark is lower, in addition to all of our other expenses being high.
Yes, I'm sorry, Courtney. No,
Anyway, yeah, so facilities have never historically generated a profit. We try to operate them as efficiently as possible, but there are events where we take on those events because of the economic impact that they have to the overall region, even though knowing that it's going to increase our operating expenses that aren't 100% offset for revenues.
yeah, well, convention centers are generally an amenity to be a foundation to host events,
Right.
food and beverage functions, conventions, meetings, Smurf groups. There are very few facilities throughout the entire country that are profitable. I think there's,
Like your ballroom,
I think we're the,
you can't charge enough to pay for what it costs you.
I think we'll be meeting with or revisiting the Aramark discussion is in the budget discussion where I just think they were so far off. And even in the, I think we're flushing out kind of the communication lines with staff and their side and.
yeah, we had
Because
a,
if they're gonna forecast that irresponsible or, you know.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna have to figure out, you know, you can't go into the, we're kind of going into the, you know, going into this blind.
Well, with Courtney is doing their work for them, right?
Yeah, so and there's a few, like a little bit of history into what went on with the budget process. So like Mike mentioned, we started noticing early on in Q1 that their budget to actual performance wasn't lining up. We asked for explanations. The first response we got was we don't have that information, to which we replied, you created the budget and you have the actual performance, so you certainly do. So we did escalate it to their district manager. We eventually got a response, and the response was that they did not take into account the events that were booked in the building in fiscal year 25 when they built their budget. They just took last year's actuals and added percentages, which isn't how you would accurately budget. We had a call with them. They submitted their first draft of the fiscal year 26 budget, and they did the same thing. It was just built off actuals. That budget was around $400,000. I rejected it, and Mike rejected it and said you have to go back and actually look at what's booked in the building. They came back with a $900,000 budget for fiscal year 26, but we still are missing explanations as to why their expenses have gone up so much over the last 3 years. I mean, we went from 1.3 million in profit now to a $20,000 net loss, and we really don't have good explanations because that agreement is structured to where it's revenues less expenses is what the RSCBA splits with them.
Right.
So we need explanations on both sides.
So Courtney, at what point, so we approved a budget, in that budget, was there a line item on expected revenue from
Absolutely. So Aramark, for the contract, they are required to prepare the food and beverage budget, and that's a component of total facilities revenues. So right now, total facilities revenues are down 1 million due to Aramark not coming into their projections.
But in our original budget, they submitted to us.
Yep.
And we didn't, did we not catch it? Was that on?
So we asked them multiple times for their assumptions and detailed explanations as to what was going into their budget, and they provided faulty information each time right up until the deadline. And then so as soon as Q1 came around again, we said, we never got your assumptions to know what went into this budget, why it's so far off. They told us we don't have this information, and then we escalated it to their district manager. So this has been an escalating problem of not receiving responses to requested information.
And based on their year one performance, which was outstanding,
Right,
we made some assumptions that they were budgeted
Yeah.
correctly.
Yeah.
When we saw the first draft of the 25-26 budget, and they purely were going off of prior year production at the Reno Event Center, that sent off the alarms right that there's a problem. They're not budgeting based on what's in the building, they're budgeting off of prior year act.
I know we're dealing with this in the finance committee. What's our response? I mean, in our contract with Airmark, they came in with a budget. I know we're dealing with this, but are we required based on the budget that's been approved? But if they were not providing the information to substantiate their budget, what's our contract, I guess, essentially with Airmark?
So I don't have it in front of me, but basically they have to provide us the budget with supporting information, and we just haven't. Courtney hasn't had luck getting that.
Yeah.
We talked about this earlier in finance. Aramark made a presentation at the finance committee this morning. They're gonna be back in front of the board next week, and we sort of had this discussion with them, so we'll see what they come back to us with next week.
It was made clear that kind of the method of improvement that is expected, right?
And expectation.
Right.
And thank you. So one of the things in, our board meeting, we heard about the GSA with City of Reno. And so just looking at these numbers, Mike, and I feel like at this subcommittee, I want to ask my fellow board members. I keep asking the question. I've talked to my constituency at the chamber. What value is, Councilwoman, your points were spot on, right? We have these facilities that operate not for profit, like on that bottom line, but what they bring in. But does the REC actually bring in something to this region? And I want to know what that is. If it is, I mean, we need to know that. But every single time REC gets brought up, it's like headache with the city, headache with us, headache with our vendors. Last time I was there, I shared my headaches just on my experience. So what value is the REC actually providing to our region as part of our destination tourism? And I know it's an open-ended question, but.
Yeah, I mean, again, Mike Larragetta from Greenwich. Initially, I think the thought behind when the REC was built was to be a concert venue and to be a sports venue. At one time, the Sacramento Kings G League team was based here in Reno. So you had 80 home games a year, I would guess, right? So that created obviously activity in the facility. When they left the region, it then became limited group business, limited concert business, and a few events such as Disney on Ice or those types of shows. So right now, I don't know how, Renee, not to put you on the spot, how many events we did in the building last year, less than 50 all in.
Yeah, we average around between 40 and 45 a year. And this last fiscal year, we did 9, the year before we did 19, and then the year before that, we did 23. But it's all contingent on our partnership with Caesars and our partnership with promoters.
Well, and I know we're gonna talk about this issue specifically, right, as a board. With the REC and the city, that's coming back and as another agenda item.
So we're meeting with the city on the 19th to
Okay.
discuss how to position it moving forward.
Right,
But we have, and this question came up in the finance committee, we have budgeted that revenue because the contract still exists as is.
yeah, no, I just was saying, we are looking at
Yes.
this as a board, and then I know as a board, we've decided. To put some money into the facility, so we're gonna see what happens over the next year with these concerts.
Yeah, we went through that today in the finance committee presenting our capital, and but I think it was around 340,000 into the REC and capital for next fiscal. 300,000 that allocated for lights and sound because of our commitment to entertainment.
Yeah.
A lot of higher end music acts will want
They're gonna need it.
even higher level
Yeah.
equipment, so they will still have to either bring their own or outsource. But this is appealing to the comedians, to the Disney on Ices, those types of shows.
Is, and I,
I'm just getting poked by the attorney. That's what I'm saying.
yeah, so to stay on, the chair,
Yeah,
to stay on the agenda.
yeah.
Good. As a goal, right, like we set these goals intentionally for our staff and approve them, and I just feel like perhaps a conversation as a board about the REC, because I don't. The goals would have been met if REC wasn't necessarily part of this equation, the way I'm looking at the numbers. I mean, or we'd be really stinking close. So I feel like it's important for us to talk about it as we visit next iterations of goals, because that goes back to the thing, we just had this big conversation about all these concerts and promotion and really excited about that, but second, do they have to be at the REC? Could they be at the Livestock Event Center? Could they be at, have we done concerts at the convention center?
Yes.
Yeah.
No?
You weren't
Sitting
doing
in
it.
So maybe
Different scale.
we do a deep dive, maybe
Yeah.
discussing this facility or facilities, I don't know. Or Renee will bring you to have an agenda item for a future board meeting, or even it can come back to this committee before we can vet it here and then go bring it to the board, but
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that there's an opportunity to look.
We got those beautiful suites we've invested in.
I know.
I know.
We got Joel and we've got.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work.
So
Let's
I
give
agree
it
with
a
you,
chance.
but I think the next year.
Over the next year.
I mean, and again, I'm not trying to pile on the Airmark discussion, but the missed number was there.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was them.
You know, the REC's a challenge, these facilities all have their own challenges. I think when you go in projecting a certain, I mean, again, for this year coming up, you're gonna have your projections for 6 shows or, and however we get there, might not. I mean, we were saying that maybe it's, if Caesar steps up their interest,
Yeah.
all of a sudden it kind of seems like.
Yeah.
Something has switched, even with their booking in-house,
Yeah,
not even in the REC, but
Right.
then that might uptick into the positive more than we expected to.
Right.
That's true.
I think getting a truer, wasn't so much that the number was so bad with Airmark, it was just so inaccurate from, you know, how they were getting to it.
Exactly.
But anyway, I mean,
and we're learning too with them as a partner, Airmark, because it's a new partnership. New contractor. and so-
Mark.
Yeah. More responsive in providing information. I mean, when we ask for budget assumptions, we should get those. We shouldn't have to ask multiple times for months on end before we receive them, because we were proactive in asking for those and just did not receive them.
Mhm. So we'll continue that discussion, big, high level discussion.
Okay, moving right along. Goal number 5 was community engagement. The board approved goal was to participate in 20 activities per year. Pacing, we have hit the goal and we are forecasting based on what is scheduled between now and the end of the fiscal year to participate, myself and the leadership team, in 46 total activities fiscal year. So great achievement on that one. Any questions on community engagement? Okay, thank you. Goal number 6, staff retainment. So this goal was to improve full-time staff retainment, voluntary terminus exits by 5%. Right now, we're pacing April through June at 11.8. And prior to that, July through March, we were at 8%. So right now we are projecting to not meet this goal and finish right around below 12%.
Do you have to put retirements in that? I didn't ask that at our pre-board.
No.
No. Okay, so you don't put those in there. I was trying to
And,
help you out.
and this goal was,
Ambitious.
and
Very
ambitious,
ambitious.
and there was a gray area that we probably didn't think about what goes into that number, right? So we come up with a different plan for next year.
Yeah.
And the last goal is goal number 7, staff surveys. And this was to oversee the implementation of a staff satisfaction survey, including a component for the CEO feedback to enhance workplace culture and productivity. We did achieve this goal. The employee survey was sent out and completed by February 2025. As we've shared in prior meeting, we had a response rate of 73%, which is outstanding, and a 96% satisfaction or above in terms of the culture for our employees of our CDL. And that concludes my goals for E1.
So on E1, this layers into your review, correct?
Correct.
And that will be a discussion for the full board
July.
in July, okay.
Usually comes here first.
Okay, so we'll have another meeting
And
over the
then,
contract and
and
everything?
then to the whole
Okay.
board based on recommendations from this meeting.
Okay. So with that in mind, knowing that we'll layer these into the review, are there any other questions on this?
The purpose, just for background, the purpose of going where you are now and where they anticipate being, so then you can look at the new fiscal year goals, knowing where you are to see where you want to be in the following fiscal year. So that's the purpose.
I do have a question. I think maybe Madam Chair or Stephen give some guidance on what happened, finance, but so these are the goals that we've set forth, and obviously we want our executive team to feel supported and valued by, these are our priorities. Have we had a goal? Sort of an efficiency goal? Like, take a look, I mean, you're dealing with every one of the electeds on this board's dealing with it at your localities. We have to tighten the bootstrap or the waistband a little bit, right? And figure out how to save. And I know you guys are dealing with a budget deficit that you'll come to us with. Can we add a goal in the future to find ways that our executive team can save costs? And can we add a new goal? And I don't know if we're making that decision today, but that's one of the things that came to my
I
mind.
think you can. I think it's gonna be, yes, the next item, so.
I just want to bring that, I like
Yeah.
these, but I feel like an efficiency, some sort of cost savings goal that maybe we can have our mini. I don't know if I should say the word Doge or not, but you know what I mean, right? Like an efficiency clean out of RSCB, I forget on campus. Sorry.
We didn't specifically, sorry, Mike, I got the record. We didn't identify in what we're presenting today, a specific goal to efficiency. But as we went over today in the finance committee, we have put together a plan as it relates to identifying efficiencies, both from an administrative side, merit, COLA, bonus, hiring, freezes, etc., based on room tax revenues as we evaluate them as we proceed through the next fiscal year. We also have tasked each department head to identify up to 5% in savings, again, tied to performance as we went in. We will hold at the end of every quarter, we will look at performance and determine whether we need to implement any of those savings initiatives. So maybe there's an opportunity to tie those together as a goal. And facilities is, I believe it is our number one in terms of expenses, operating expenses, where when you look at the budget next week, you'll see an increase. And so, and there's a variety of reasons contributing to that. But I have tasked Chad with, we need to really identify opportunities as it relates to labor. We need to identify opportunities as it relates to our contract vendor agreements such as security. And we need to identify potential opportunities as if there is a period of time where the facility is dormant, shutting it down.
Right. Well, and I know that before Chad got on board, I had hooked the team up with our sustainability person to see if there's, because I don't know, there theoretically should still be a little bit of that funding around for community solar. You know what I mean? Like ways to reduce your operating expenses as far as, the
Absolutely.
cost of the building, operating the building. So I don't know if those conversations are continuing.
I'm not aware if they are. I know that we did over the last few years make some changes as it relates to lighting and trying to identify some of those efficiency opportunities. But this is really just cutting costs. I mean, yes, you always want to find better product to lower cost, but this is, if we don't have anything programmed for 2 weeks, the REC, we would leave the exterior lights on, obviously to protect the building from vagrancy, but interior, we would.
Well, and I agree with Eddie too. I think a goal in this next proposed goals that we're looking at, a metric, the way to measure, what finance had this morning on efficiencies like Courtney's listed, cost savings, what our, strategies are for how do we cut costs? How are we more efficient? And if there was a way, a metric to look at those that you've already presenting in policy or just in your narrative for finance was super, they were there. So how do we quantitate, I can't even say the word, quantitatively measure those, because that would give us a good idea as we look at all of these, like at the end of the year, then did we make some difference? Instead of it would be a goal, but I like being able to measure it so that we can see how we did and how we can move forward with that. I like that.
Okay, well, with that, let's officially move into E2. This is the planning session to review, discuss, and prioritize our CBA 25-26 President CEO goals. Back to you, Mr. Thurgood.
And sure, Mike Thurgood for the record. So we went through a pretty extensive process of myself meeting with the department heads, identifying goals, going through the justifications for each goal. Came to an agreement on, well, kind of an agreement. I think I told John what his goal was, but on what those goals should be. And so if the committee is okay with it, I would like each department head to present their individual goals on what we came up with. And if there's any questions as to how we came to those numbers or those goals, then they can provide the justifications.
That's great.
Okay. Goal number 1, John McGinnis.
That's me. John McGinnis for the record. As you know, just kind of reviewing our sales goal for this year was 261,122 room nights. For fiscal year 25-26, we are recommending a room night goal of 282,523 room nights, which is an increase overall of 8.2% or 21,412 room nights. A lot of things factor into this number, 2 of which we already account for a great year 2 in track, where we are hoping, or we know we're going to have an additional 5 more track meets, which will account for another 10,000 room nights. One of our legacy accounts, Wild Sheep, had a tremendous year this year, increasing their attendance by 13%, which was about 2,000 extra room nights. And they have they're not stopping there. We're hoping for even more for next year. So we took those 12,000 room nights, baked that into the goal already. If you look at a nationwide increase, the 3% is a good increase. You go 4%, they get a little shaky, and if you go 5%, they're like, "Are you really sure you want to put your job on the line?" So we looked at this, and there are some things obviously in our world right now that are a little uncertain, thanks to some federal cutbacks. The per diem room nights that are coming into 76% of the market right now are down about 9%. Future bookings for federal groups right now are down about 20%. And we don't know what the tariffs are going to do as it relates to association, which is one of our big bread and butter market segments. We don't know how that's going to trickle down and affect some of the trade associations, the automotive industry, et cetera. We just do not know. So there's kind of some unstable ground for us. So if you take out the 12,000 room nights that we've baked into that budget, that puts us at about a 3.6% increase that we're looking at for next fiscal year, which is just a little under 9,000 room nights for the team for next year to produce. talking to our major hotel convention producers here in town, their average increase for 25 and half of the year 2026, they're looking at flat to 2%, which is an indicator to us that the needle's not going to move huge more next year. But we've got some really great things that are going for us and for the region. Right now, our air service, our seats are at 8.4% year to date, which is great. And our sales team is amazing sales team that was all hired and put in place by our president and CEO, who was in the seat prior. And the least junior person on that team is now 2 years in her role. The sales team overall has experienced no less than a 5% increase in each one of those regions. And so we feel pretty strong that 3.6% is a goal that we are pretty confident that we can hit for the next fiscal year. So any questions on the methodology or?
So John, on the, when it's showing the 8.2, is that when you bake in the track
That is correct.
and the wild sheep?
That is,
When you pull that out, it's 3.6.
that is correct.
Okay, because I was wondering if we're being too ambitious. But I
We-
guess 3.6 maybe is not that.
Yeah, 3.6 is a little above the industry average, but you know, when John and I met and you just try and think of every contributing external factor, positive and negative, that can impact the number. And you just start weighting them. And you hope it spits out a number
You
that's
feel pretty
realistic.
comfortable then with this. We're not being a little ambitious. I like being challenged, absolutely.
It's an ambitious goal, but I have confidence in the team. I have confidence in the product that we sell. And salespeople,
They need
give
it.
them a number, they go get it. Yeah, they need that. And that's why they're on an aggressive incentive plan, right? Because we want to task them with going to get a number that is attainable but difficult.
I like that.
On
That's how I
the,
work.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
on the air service, did you say passengers are up 8% or seats
See,
in the market?
Seats, 4%. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's
So our goal of 282, 523 is the full goal. That was based off of the budget or the goal that we had last year, right?
so you factor in the prior year approved goal, and you also factor in what you are going to finish at, you're projecting to finish at, and then you factor in what made up what you're going to finish at.
Okay. Because we're projected to finish at like 27.
104, yeah.
Yeah, it's 104% or
Yeah.
270, yes.
Yeah, 270, so, okay. And back to Sherwin's question, it was 3.6 is the base projected.
Once you back out what we anticipate the additional track meets will bring, and then the increase in wild sheep year over year, assuming they maintain that momentum, that's the delta.
Okay, I like it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Good job. First one on marketing, Miss Ernie, then Mr. McDonald. Ernie, then McDonald.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like a law firm.
Thank you. Yes, so we are looking for this year to achieve an average paid media engagement rate of 10%. This last year, it was at 5%, which was an industry benchmark set by EDK, our agency of record, looking at national averages. We are looking at 10% this next year as our goal for paid media engagements. We strongly believe that engagement remains to be a really effective way to manage the effectiveness of our media and making sure that people are in fact engaging with it. We're also taking into consideration this year that with our visitor profile study, that the bucket of awareness was the one that was lagging a little bit. So we want to remain flexible in our media plan for this next year to maybe drive more awareness metrics. And so that's why we don't want to get too ambitious with this goal. but we feel like 10 is an ambitious yet balanced and a diversified media engagement number for paid efforts.
Does this mean our paid media increases? In order, like, we have to spend more money, like, because at the end of the day, if we're getting that click through, right, and that engagement. We're paying to get those paid media placements out there. It's still a valuable return, right? Like, you're still getting an ROI on that click through, because someone's wanting to take a look at that ad.
Absolutely.
But I guess that goes to budgeting. Do we have like, I guess I'm looking at Steve or whoever's on finance, are we coming in with the same amount for paid media?
So I can speak to that. And we went through this today, finance, when Courtney presented the budget. So, ultimately, I made the decision, even though we were coming down 3.6% in overall projected room tax, to make marketing whole to prior year.
Yeah.
And if
I
we
think that's
looked at other DMOs and CDBs, in fact, I showed them with Stephen this morning. The Las Vegas LDCVA presented their budget yesterday. Their forecast will be down 5%
Yeah.
in room tax. They're increasing their marketing budget by $36 million.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
So, although other departments did take a reduction in their individual departments, Christina, felt that it was imperative that we keep marketing whole.
So we're whole, we're flat, but we're not.
We're at 98.9 or 97.8%, I think. The prior year.
I guess my question then is, how are we, is our agency record gonna be more creative to capture, like, we're gonna hold it accountable, like.
Well, and
That's
no
what
scale.
the internal team and our agency of record, I mean, this has just been the case, and we get creative and we maximize and stretch our dollars the best we can to lift economic increases in the region. I mean, that's our job.
And to add to that, we're going through the process. We just finished today, reviewing the finalists for agency of record.
Oh,
So
yeah, that's true.
there's a possibility we may or may not have a new agency of record.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a concern, but that's why we chose to keep it flat, not flat. It was important to do that.
I guess I'm glad we're not gonna reduce our spend on marketing. I mean, I would be okay with spending more. I just think that get what you put in, like. Vegas makes sense, right? They're spending more money to bring more people there.
We had to be pretty creative to make them whole.
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
Right.
it's gonna be tight next year.
I mean, I think if there was an obvious, and maybe that comes out of next week's meeting
Mhm.
or the board meeting is, but I think to keep it whole was a challenge. I think Vegas is that's an anomaly, which is great. And I think they're part of ours. I'm glad they're interstate and they've got that kind of engine to be able to do it, but.
They also allocate, which was in that article as well, which I don't remember this when I was in Las Vegas, but they commit 50% of their overall budget to marketing and advertising.
Right, well, and I've heard properties who pulled me to the side, said that we should be doing the same thing, so I know that there's all sorts of thoughts about.
Yeah, it's just so, and you'll see this next week when Courtney presents the budget, so there are expenses, PERS.
Yeah,
When you factor in the increases and then you have a deficit of 3.6%, and you put that together. You have to
Yeah.
find where are those buckets that you can move around. To get to that number. Okay, next one, sorry,
Next one, if there are no more questions. The next goal we are changing just slightly. So instead of a partner referral rate, we worked with our agency partners and the internal team, and we're recommending to the board that we change this goal to, it's kind of a mouthful to say, but then I'll explain what it is. It's an increased enhanced website engagement sessions. To achieve 733,080 sessions, which is an estimated 5% increase over this past year. So what this is it's an enhanced website engagement session. So instead of just focusing on partner referrals, that's going to be one of 4 engagement metrics that we will be looking at. We're gonna be looking at, did a user visit 3 or more pages when they came to our website? Did they click to a partner referral? Did they interact with our itinerary builder, which is a personalization element on our website where we can gather more information about this customer, and they most frequently fill out a give us their email address as a part of this. And also boost our personalization efforts on our website. And then last is our AI chat interaction. As AI continues to be such a forefront of the travel industry, we feel that people engaging with that interaction is an indicator that people might be planning a trip. So this broadened focus from just partner referral rate and going as much as we continue want to send traffic to all of our partners. It really is a more holistic approach for the modern traveler, getting information, whether it's from AI, whether it is going to one of our partner websites, which is still part of this goal, or being engaged with our website with at least 3 or more sessions, or pages per session. So this is a 5% increase year over year. We are looking at this number in total is about 18% of our total website users. So we're looking at 18% of our users being engaged, very engaged on our website. And we feel this actively showcases how our efforts are working. And if our website efforts are working, keeping those visitors to our website engaged and actively planning a trip.
So Christina, I might be a little confused. So this sounds like it's a whole new enhanced goal. So we can't really compare it to what we did
Correct.
this year, the year before.
Well-
If we're adding, there was a piece of it, but you're adding more. So it kind of starts anew.
It is
with
new, but we
numbers
did
and with
look at
goals.
what those metrics were for this past year and
And did we metric all of that, or do we just
yeah,
metric?
we have all this
the-
data within our data platforms and measuring platforms. So
Okay,
we
we've
looked
already
at
done.
where we are today, even though we're not being bonused off of that goal, and that's not one of our key organizational goals. We look at this data.
Okay.
We're just choosing to combine it, and that's where that 5% increase year over year is coming from. This is the actual data for this year to date and anticipated through the end of June 30, of course, but yeah, we're anticipating a 5% increase
Okay,
to next.
perfect, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good measurement.
I like that you're incorporating AI engagement. I mean, I think this is good. We're moving, we're modernizing.
Thank you, Christina. McDonald, thanks, Ben McDonald for the record. So for media placements, what we're doing from Urban Media standpoint, both locally and nationally, we're projecting again this year to hopefully hit that mark of 215 placements. And due to the nature of PR and the work that goes into that, we are hoping to project flat again for this year. There's a lot of reasons that go into that. We've got a lot of momentum on the track, both locally and nationally. We did about 25 of the 88 national stories were based on that track coverage. And a lot of that is surrounding that it was the first year for track. So we have a lot more to talk about this year, but it's also, not the new kid on the block anymore, which presents some challenges. Also, we've been very successful with media visits this year. We've had 24 media visits already this fiscal year, and we have 3 more at minimum on track right now that we're already planning for. Which would put us about 27, hopefully 28 by the end of the fiscal year. Generally, we get between 12 and 16 media visits in any given year. Media placements is also a new metric that we're tracking specifically and reporting to the board, although we have been tracking that in the past. This year is pacing to be our largest year in the last 6 years. As far as placements go, with the low point of the last 3 years being 138 placements, which was back in 22-23. So there is a high level of fluctuation. It takes a great deal of effort. Sometimes it really matters if you get a big syndication that can hit either the entire West Coast or goes on to Yahoo or some other larger digital publications. And we are also really focused on securing placements in quality publications as opposed to the quantity of publications that don't necessarily hit our target. And so I also don't want to fall into a pattern where we're asking our agencies to go out and just place a bunch of stories in publications and digital on websites that our target audience is not looking at just to try to hit that hiding number.
Did you
pitch the sushi story to the New York Times?
No, that wasn't what Mike Higg did. No,
Oh,
that was Mike. Yeah, so
Okay.
Mike's, do you know Mike Higg?
yeah,
Yeah, local reporter, not a reporter anymore, but worked at RGJ and I think a couple other online publications and he and his wife own a local media company, and that just came straight from
Wow.
him. Yeah,
it's a great story.
yeah.
It was very, very exciting.
I know, I was like, can we take credit for this? And then I looked and I was like, no.
How much does this goal, so remind me, we had a conversation about the RFP for these companies, we had the local and the national, right? We sent it out, was that a 1-year contract or is that a 2-year contract?
Those are essentially 1-year contracts,
Okay,
but
and where are we in that cycle of the RFP? So I'm assuming we're reviewing.
So it-
Reviewing RFPs. Yeah.
we do have an extension out to 2 years.
Okay.
But I mean, essentially, they're all 30-day out contracts. We just did go back through the RFP process for local and national. It has been 7 years since we've done that in the past, from the RFP standpoint. It's professional services. It's not necessarily required that we do that, but we want to be transparent. And, you know, I would think that if similar to what we've done in the past, we'll come to the board with a recommendation and a request to either extend a contract at some point, or we can go back out to RFP. I believe that's correct. Yeah, okay, thank you.
And so from what we did last year in that analysis, I guess you hit something that really resonated with me, which is the quality of our placements. And at what point can we get an analysis from you? Like really critical analysis.
Yeah.
On, did these agencies give us, shotgun approach? Did they actually target and give us some value? I mean, Chair's talking about the New York Times story, but that wasn't even us. That was someone else. So, I'd love a deeper dive at some point. Maybe is that something we do by the board meeting or not? Not too soon.
By next week would be a challenge.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, and the agenda is
That's true.
June, maybe?
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
On the media inquiries, or I think it's, I don't know if this is the term you used, but. So that's pretty much tourism related, right? Are we at all, again, we cross so many paths with Edon. Is there a blend at times with their efforts or?
Can be.
Cause I could see, I mean, I still remember speaking of the sushi article.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years
Yeah,
ago,
when
Wall
we
Street
did
Journal
like
did
a-
an article on Trick.
Yeah,
And it was like, you can't pay for that,
Right.
right? And it really, the whole Gigafactory, it was a real positive for Reno, I thought.
Yeah.
So we did just have a call, if I may, so,
Right.
we did just have a call with Nancy McCormick over at EDON about a month and a half ago, with our national PR team.
Right.
Just kind of brainstorming and talking about, what they're doing, how we might be able to leverage some of that information as far as new industry coming in, how it affects the tourism environment as well as workforce and
Yeah.
and housing and things like that. So we are brainstorming and we're talking about the destination as a whole, right? We're very focused on tourism and generating visitation, leisure visitors. I believe we did 28% of our coverage last year on a national level was in meeting the conventions publications. So we're really focused on that as well. And there's a lot of crossover
Yeah.
there.
That's
But
great.
you know, we do incorporate that in our pitching,
Yeah.
but also, you know, it's like, it's kind of like the OTAs where, you know, we can only do what the hotels will allow us to do. We can only get the stories that the writers are looking for also. So we're constantly speaking with the travel writers, finding, you know, giving them a laundry list of things that we can talk about, and then they come back and say, oh, well, our editor's interested in this. What can you give me more on that?
Yeah, so a lot of times, Stephen, when I'm doing, Ben sets me up for an interview with a leading publication, I will intentionally try and incorporate EDON and the airport into it. Or when I did the podcast at the Peppermint with Greenberg,
Yep.
right?
Oh, yeah, beautiful.
It was, you try and bring that all in, right? And to the.
Right.
okay.
That concludes marketing. Goal 3, leisure room nights, Mr. Jimenez.
Okay. So the The goal for goal number 3 is to produce 687,223 cash PERS and room nights. And those will be recorded by 11 hotel properties and our GDS recording platform. And this is going to represent 15% of Mike's overall goal. So how do we get to this number? So we're using confirmed room nights for July through March. That's as far as we have right now. Then we're using the budgeted room nights for April through June that are budgeted for the current fiscal year. We also have 2 other things we factored in. One is that this segment represents about 28% of the overall cash room nights for the destination. So we factored that for fiscal year 26, it will represent 27.1%. Then we also factored in that we're going to see a 0.2 decline in overall cash room nights for the destination. So factoring those 2 in gets us to the 687,223, which is a considerable increase from this year's goal. You know, and we're seeing, you know, as Mike mentioned, you know, some of the properties when you see some clouds in the sky, they open up that faucet, you know, for this channel. Plus, we remain a viable drive market, especially when it comes to a value destination. So we can see some increases there. And then also, even though USBC has blocks, a lot of those visitors do tend to book out of the block because they want to get their Marriott points or Hilton points. So I think with all that considered, we'll see a strong channel for next fiscal year. Questions?
What will be is there a percentage increase over last year of the leisure room nights?
Of the projected year end
Mhm.
or the goal? I heard the goal is 634,111 for this year. And we're projecting we're going to end up
687.
688.
Okay.
So we're projecting it's just 0.2% down from the actual, but it's considerably above where we budgeted for this year. We had a great year in this channel.
Thanks, Art. Goal 4, facility revenue.
All right, so for the facility revenue goals, we are projecting that we will make $7.382 million next year. This is a 14.71% increase from what we budgeted for this last fiscal year. The majority of that is being carried by the National Bowling Stadium because we are hosting the USBC championships. And we are also expected to get about 5,200 more bowlers this year than we did back in 2023. So the other venues, the Convention Center, the Livestock Event Center, and the Reno Event Center are close to flat with both slight decrease, like the Convention Center is down 1%, and the Livestock Event Center is down about 6%. And I forgot what the REC is. The REC is down about 7%. And we took into consideration expecting Caesars to book future concerts next year. They have started to put holds on the calendar, which is a very positive thing to do, and we're excited about that. And then if we have to purchase those 6 concerts, then we put the concert total at 15 compared to 19 and then the 9 that we did this year. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. Pretty aggressive.
So, yeah, so the REC budget, we projected it down 7%. Is that what?
Yes, from 24-25, because we're gonna, and we plan on ending this year at about 56% down.
And let me just, so it's 7% down from what? But the
original budget.
actuals are, or the original?
Original budget. So we
Yes.
and we talked about this today in the finance committee. It's an aggressive goal. That being said, however we get to the number we need to get to at the REC based on concerts and events, we also made a commitment to this board of booking 6 concerts. And we have the funds that were approved by this board to get there. We need to be held accountable for hitting that. But like Stephen mentioned earlier today, and that's I think again this afternoon, is if the number is to get to 25 events, whether we can book 10 of them and Caesars Entertainment books 10 and there's 5 co-pros, great. How about we get to the number? We get to the number. We rely on other parties to contribute to booking that facility. But we did make a commitment to get to 6, so we reflected that in our budget for that particular facility.
And one concert can bring in anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000. So it's fair. We can get those, we should get that number.
Okay, thanks, Renee. Call number 5, I will take, so community engagement. Again, this is, was put in place last year, and we're recommending to put it again for this next year. As for us and myself and the senior leadership team to get out to the community to continue to educate the community about who the RCDA is, what we do, why we're here, how we can be an asset. Last year's goal was 20. We are projected to finish at 36. We recommended 30, and the reason why we chose that number is because we want to get more specific on the activities that we're participating in. This last year, we were trying to be anywhere and everywhere. And so we want to be more targeted on speaking engagements, more targeted on the indie talks, the WIN breakfast, those types of activities. Questions on goal 5? Okay, goal 6, Lori.
Hi, Lori Tangy for the record. We decided to move away from the focus on attrition and focus more on the employee surveys, which are really more quantifiable. And because the attrition rates are just so fluid or fluctuating, the data that we were getting from our attrition information is now replaced with our exit surveys. And so those are sent electronically to all employees whenever they're exiting the organization. So we'll get more data through, we believe, through that than we would through just counting numbers of how, when employees leave the organization. So we decided to create 2 goals. One is looking to achieve an increase in the response rate. And I noted, and I apologize, it's not in goal number 6. We're looking to increase it from a response rate of 73% to 75%. Which is very, very high. It's a great aiming point. It is 40% above the national average to achieve a 75% response rate. But we're so close to it, we really wanted to continue with that momentum. And so the second goal is on employee satisfaction. And so as you know, when you saw the results of the survey, our first survey, which is our benchmark, we decided to maintain a satisfaction rate of 96% or higher from our employees.
Yeah, we're good. Make it happen.
As we're reducing a budget.
Yeah.
Chairwoman's point, is that ambitious? And so we talked about it as a team.
Really ambitious.
It is very ambitious, but when you really think about it, we can't go backwards.
You already did it.
We already did it. And so if we were to say to you, well, we did 96%, but now we're just gonna try for 90, that wouldn't make any sense. And so we really feel that we have the momentum. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. We're staying the course. We're making improvements on, the things we learned and the things we know. So we decided not to increase it, but to maintain it because it's already pretty terrific.
And I like ambitious. I'm good.
And although for me, this is both my review and my bonus, the bonus is a component of it, and bonuses need to be aggressive. You need to achieve high standards, so we.
Sweet.
Well, the survey, and again, I can't remember, we use a third party, right?
Yes, we do, and we're gonna continue to use them.
And I'm assuming the survey probably won't be identical, right? Because are there certain things that will shift just but you'd probably be 90% the same, so you can benchmark. You know
Yes,
what I'm saying?
yes, there's a library of services of surveys that we can use. We're intending to do sort of a mid-year pulse survey just to get an idea, and then that annual survey. We can use the same one, and then there's also a more advanced one. But it would still result in basically the same information that we seek to know.
It is all done on the phone?
It can be done on the phone. Employees are sent a QR code, so they can do it on their cell phones. They can do it from their personal computers or their work computers. And we did, when we kicked it off, we set up, workstations, in the different locations where, they were able to use it if, not all of us are computer centric in what we do. And so for all the facilities, they were able to just at least get to a computer or have it on their phone.
See, I think your number of getting your participation, honestly, I don't think that's. You start out with a good number anyhow, but I don't think going up a couple points, I think you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Because I think the experience was positive. I think you shared the information with them, right?
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying change it, I think the 90-some%. That's pretty, we'll find out if that was a one-off, and again, I'm not saying that it's gonna be down.
Well, we looked at the response rate two ways. We literally had this conversation because on one side, we're like, okay, employees who chose not to take it now see that it was a confidential, trusted process
Right.
and they'll respond. Counter argument,
There.
employees that didn't want to take it
Yeah, you're.
and now take it, but maybe more,
Mhm.
True,
which could hurt your 96%. So it's a,
I mean, that 96 is high.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
Which is
the
great.
satisfaction and above rate, so satisfied, very happy and
Yeah,
happy
okay.
employees. The 73% was the response rate, and we ticked it up 2% for a 75%. And I mean, just as a side note, the in the survey itself, besides the high response rate, we had 116 employees leave 444 comments.
Wow.
And
Great.
that also in and of itself is, it's just mind boggling,
Yeah.
it's so positive. And, we found that even if employees left comments that were constructive or maybe not so positive, none of them were, horrible or negative, that it was constructive feedback. But you could compare the data to show that it didn't influence their overall feeling of being satisfied, happy, or very happy about the organization. Which means they could say, I understand that there's a problem here, or I'd like to see something better. But I still love working at RSCBA. I love our leadership. I love the teamwork. And so I think that's pretty special.
That's great.
Actually. Yeah.
Madam Chair, that concludes the fiscal year 25-26 recommended CEO grade.
And so, Mr. Applesar, are you asking that another goal be considered?
Yeah, I would love for us to have an efficiency goal in here as part of your evaluation of us. I think we come here, we're looking at budgets, we're asking about where we can save dollars, we see what's coming. I don't think it's gonna get better before for a bit, so I'd like to see that goal added. I don't know what the appropriate metric is. Maybe we can ask them to come back and bring it.
Would the committee be okay with Courtney and I can get together, come up with a recommendation, present it to the board?
Yeah, I have a think, because Christina's team is not gonna be able to find financial efficiencies because we're saying spend the money. Do you know what I mean? So I think
Yeah.
it's being,
I mean, the good news is the plan is already in play, right, in terms of what we would be looking at from an administrative side and what we'd be looking at from a department operating
Mhm.
expense. So if room tax revenues are falling off and we are not hitting budget through Q1, we will implement portions of the plan. Maybe that's part of the goal thing. Did we, based on this scenario, did you implement that reduction?
If necessary, yeah, did we monitor performance and implement necessary reductions?
Yep.
Maybe that's the one way to word it.
it's funny when the county, we are like a flat budget essentially, but we're sweeping salary savings because folks are not hiring in positions and then using that for contracts. And so we're trying to clean that up and see if we can find some savings. But I was even thinking last meeting, I was like, what if there was like a award for doing something that saved the organization money, either implementing technology or, you know what I'm saying, like delivering the service, but still, finding a way to do it in a better way. And I was just thinking of like a one-off. So I don't know if that also is an idea too, but
State of Nevada does have a award for state employees, that if someone finds a significant cost savings, I don't know what the metric is, they get a $10,000 bonus.
Has anyone gotten it? I don't think.
No
they
one
have.
has gotten it.
No one.
I've heard.
Because I think it's so hard, because you're a direct service organization, most cases.
I mean, it would be easy, I mean, I think, because it's the CEO goal, you wanna look at it from an organization standpoint, but it would be very easy to identify a goal in facilities and say, we need to cut expenditures by X percentage, because our operating costs are very high.
Yeah, and so finding creative ways to do that, you know, whether they're different investments or shutting off the lights, or I don't even know what that looks like.
Our IT team has made some really significant cost savings in terms of cutting contracts, bringing things in-house.
Mhm.
They've had some significant savings in terms of equipment, different creative ways that we procured equipment as well. So we can create a summary, Mike, and send that to you. I think that would be really great to show, because our IT team has saved a significant amount of money in the last several years and going forward.
But I don't know if I was necessarily thinking each department has a percentage cut, right? Because like, again, I want to be clear, I'd rather our marketing budget go up.
Right.
Like to me, that would be a goal. If we can save money and spend more money in advertising and marketing to bring more people here, to me, that's phenomenal. But I'm saying a broader, not in sales. An efficiency
That's
metric.
why I consider them.
I don't, right? An efficiency metric that,
I
and again, at large, and I don't.
I think again, getting ahead of ourselves, but I would love, especially like facilities, no pressure, Chad, but to come back to our board on a quarterly basis and
Yeah,
see how we are tracking in our operating expenses versus budget, right? Because he's got an $8.3 million operating expense budget. It is
Yeah.
8.3, 8.8.
8.8 is the loss, the operating expense is 16.9.
Oh, 16.9.
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's your goal.
Yeah. Be efficient though, right?
Well, with that, any other committee comments on this or changes or?
I do, it's kind of ties into the efficiency, but, and it's a procurement kind of piece, but I do think like with the agency of record going out to bid, just examining everything that is a bid piece, a bid, right? And also, what schedule are we on to just review those? Are there some that, hey, we haven't looked at this for 5-6 years?
Or contracts.
Right, you brought up security, I think that's great. Temp. And there's a lot of players in that field, it might just, the fact you're going out to bid might get them to sharpen the pencil.
100%.
So.
We'll discuss that.
Yeah, and not to call out, but I mean, we have contracts. I mean, I know Jesse's team's doing a great job. We have a bill moving. I think they're maybe presenting while we're talking right now, who knows? But I think I was informed, like, are we paying for a federal office? Do we?
We did not budget that for fiscal year 2026.
Okay, but we did.
We did.
Oh, that's interesting.
For
didn't know that.
a lot federal, yes, for.
So we had a contract for federal and that, so I know that's maybe I'm jumping to the fun stuff, at the budget, but like, to me, that's an efficiency thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, thank you for.
We eliminated that. We presented some of that today. I don't get that. We run that in the finance committee, but yeah, we did. We advised them this week, actually, that we were not renewing for next fiscal. Saved us $60,000.
Do we evaluate fees that we charge for things? I know with the city, we all of a sudden are looking at some fees, whether it's waste management or other fees or contracts we renew, we have to take the lowest, but even the contracts, I think, relooking and like you said, just competition. If you've got whoever we've had maybe forever we like, but I think the option of maybe getting a better deal, but on fees too, is it something we look at? What fees are and do we have some that are just there that we haven't looked at? I was shocked, some of the ones for the city. Like, what did we, 10 years?
No, what we have per se.
That we're paying?
Yeah,
No, just that the city is charging people and we haven't looked at them for 10
I think
years.
that fees that Tasha was mentioning from the
Yeah.
city, is that what?
I don't know
Well,
if we can
those are
look at
fees that
fees.
we pay to, if we do a parade or we do livestock.
But do people pay us fees for different,
Parking. Different.
Oh, like our rate.
Your revenue.
our rates, I guess your rates on different
We look at revenue channels
costs,
for
yeah.
things like parking, you bet, like we're in the process right now, we're in our ticket master agreement. We're negotiating that.
Right, that kind of thing that people pay us and we haven't relooked at and that they're not maybe what they should be today.
We have a price increase as well in our rent and our equipment rentals this year coming in fiscal 25-26.
Okay.
So it's nominal, it's like 30%, but we do have something.
And you know, like for an example too, I know I'm getting in the weeds a little bit, but when Chad presented our capital recommendations to the finance committee today, when we looked at specifically what we're recommending for the RSLEC, we tried to keep there was probably 10 items, but we tried to keep our expenditures, you know, all below 100,000. And we also tried to focus on capital items that we would own that had a value that should, depending on, because we're a little bit in limbo right now because of the agreement, the instrument agreement going from the county to the state. So until that's finalized, we tried to identify capital items that, not that we think everything's gonna be status quo, but until the paper dries, the ink dries, we don't know. So we, you know, a forklift or something that we could reuse in another facility or sell. Instead of resurfacing the asphalt for $2 million.
Yeah,
So,
It needs it.
yeah.
Madam Chair, Councilman, you brought up a great point about the fees, but it took me, we have the ability to do fees as well. So I mean, we haven't talked about revenue generation from unique sources. Could we look at a user fee to every, I mean, the volleyball, the volleyball term is just incredible, right? And you have so many people flooding that convention center for what, four weekends in a row? And they're just throwing credit cards everywhere, like, to be honest. And part of that's like, well, Airmark, you know, I'm sure they're listening, but like, there's so much need in that venue that we had to have, what, 10, 15 food trucks littered, and not littered, wrong word, but available, and there were lines constantly. My question, like, could we request that maybe as part of the efficiency that we initiated out of county user fee? Or
I think that has to go to Ledge, right?
I don't know, I don't think so. Ben and I have got, I think we can implement a.
I mean, we
user fee.
do have a exclusive contract with a food service provider that limits us in the convention center. They have all concessions and catering in that particular facility, so we might be restricted there.
Well, I meant like, you know, so. You know, all these people come in, all these out-of-state families coming in, they're buying a ticket to enter, because everyone had to buy a ticket to go into the volleyball
Right.
tournament. Couldn't we tack on a RSCBA user fee that helps?
That,
Generate
the
revenue.
gate go to NCBA,
It goes, yeah, it covers their rent. They pay a lot of rent.
they pay,
For the venue.
I know, but. We're leasing, we're giving them that space, we can tack a fee on to any user.
We're charging them for that space though.
so when you rent the facility, right? We basically, in their rent, it's your house. So could we in the agreement say, oh, by the way, we're tacking on $2 per ticket? Then they're gonna say, we'll take that off my rent. It just, anything is possible, but volleyball may not be the
So it's
best
not a
example.
pure transaction. Then I don't know, am I leading into?
Yeah, we're getting a little off topic here, but I think
We need to add you to the finance committee.
We talked to the chair.
yeah, I mean, I think users of our facilities, can
You're
we,
welcome to come on.
like a user of our facility, somebody that's attending an event, yes, we can add a charge to that person to use it, but I think to Mike's point, it's gonna be 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Because the organization is not just gonna say, well, I guess you get that and you get to keep it, they're gonna want it back somewhere else.
I mean, we're there, saying you guys, but same in the Peppermill app, when we're negotiating with the group coming in. We technically could say we're gonna add $2 on top of the rate that we're already quoting.
Energy surcharge.
Right, I mean, we kind of do, right,
Yeah.
resort fees and all that, but I do think you're gonna get, I think there's a pushback from. the organizer that's gonna go, well, that's $2. If I could have done that, I would have kept, I'll split the $2 with it. You know what I mean? It's gonna become a negotiating point.
It's the same thing we fight with parking garage at NBS. Everyone wants free parking. And it's like, well, that's $3,000 a day. Right. You know, $3,000 a day was a long ways, but as soon as we start adding that in, it turns into a, well, can we get a reduce this or that? So it's just back and forth.
And it's still, you have to remember, it's a competitive landscape, right?
Yeah.
And we don't want to be considered gouging or anything like that in clients as well.
When we really just want heads and beds at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so I know it's a balance. It's a
Well, back to Charmaine's point, right? The facilities are.
They facilitate our, purpose.
Yeah, you're never gonna make money on them directly. It's an indirect. We do.
I just wanna go vertical at the convention center.
What does that mean?
Seeing other revenue sources we could stack on top of the convention center. No, there's no money for that, but anyway.
We're working on,
top.
we're working on naming rights, right?
Naming rights.
They are.
Oh, that's awesome.
Do you think we need a motion on this, or?
So I think what would be helpful would be, from what I've heard, a motion approving the goals as presented with a request for an additional goal related to efficiency to be proposed at the board meeting next week.
And just one additional comment to that, adding the goal, we will need to change the weights of the existing goals.
Yeah, right.
They want to put that in the motion. They will be impacted.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it, right? We come back with a proposal, but just something so we can move this to the board and give the board some comfort that this committee has evaluated what's been proposed and is good with it thus far.
If you can come up with a proposal that makes sense, cause it's like, we have to cut budgets because of room tax, that's what we have to do. There's no bonus associated with that,
As
you
you can
know?
see, my goals and the majority of the leadership team's goals are quantitative. They are performance based.
Right.
They are hit it or don't hit it. So to your point, being efficient is a result of lack of performance by room tax.
Right,
Of course, we're going to respond to a reduction in room tax revenue.
exactly.
So is that really a goal that I should be compensated on for
That's
being
the,
responsible?
have a think.
We'll figure something out. Courtney will, just tell me what it is.
Eddie, are you looking for, I'm kind of thinking, not so much a quantitative, like a percentage of the goals as far as I think the goal is really important, and I think the metrics that we can see, does it belong in this, or is it a whole separate overall financial or fiscal goal, not the CEO's goals with everyone else? Maybe it's a goal in our finance goals for the year that adds that efficiency. I like the efficiency, but I'm not quite sure how we tie it into the CEO goals with all the weighted stuff. I don't know if that's the place for it.
In the article that I think I should request, I can't remember if I sent it to the LBC article today, they specifically call out, Steve Hill's CEO calls out that they have a goal to come in lower of their operating expenses on an annual basis.
Yeah.
And a revenue goal for the entire organization. Something like that.
So it could be a financial goal that falls under our budgetary goals that we did this morning, couldn't it?
Yeah.
You may think we're talking about two different things. If we want a goal that Mike is gonna have to achieve that has a bonus tied to it, then I think it's a.
Yeah, I think I agree.
I'm not, that were you.
And then Mike said it too, like, it's hard, it's sort of a perverse incentive, right? Like, we don't really want to put that into a metric to reward you.
I'm getting compensated for not giving merit raises.
And so,
Yeah, I don't like that.
I do think maybe we move it into the budget.
Budget goals, we
Yeah.
budgeted financial goals for the year away from bonus and CEO and the rest of the executive staff. I think it's an overall budgetary, we'd like to see the efficiencies that Courtney in this morning's, you had it spelled out for the
Yeah.
finance committee. The things you're going to do, I just want it quantitatively, how do we, but I don't want it tied to your goals. But I'm not sure if that's where you are.
So we won't do that motion.
Motion.
Yeah, motion that, yeah, okay, we have a motion.
Good conversation.
Looking for a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion, a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. And I think that passes unanimously. We'll now move into board matters, F1 and, Charlene and Eddie, are you guys getting out of here?
We're not going.
You're not.
No, because their time was so uncertain.
Okay.
Jesse is presenting a letter on our behalf.
Okay.
For that.
bills on that
Yeah.
agenda.
Okay,
They're just.
Yeah, they didn't know even what time it is.
okay.
It could be right now.
I just wanted to make sure we
Yeah,
were
we're
on
good.
track. Okay, cool. Yay, items F1, review, discussion, and possible action regarding legislative priorities for the session. And I'm not sure if we have an update on this or no.
So we don't. So our CDA's bill, AB 114, after this meeting was said and the agenda posted, we got notice that it was going to be heard today between 2 and 4. So that's where Mr. Wadums is sitting in that committee right now. So we don't have any update for that.
All right. Then we'll move to F2. This is the RSCBA review of board policies and harassment and discrimination policies. We have a red line copy of the packet and a non-red line copy.
And it's right?
Yeah, so that was just, I think how the review went, like when we compared two documents. Ben, did you have any other changes that you like to add before we got to policy 7.01?
So the only change I made was to section 1.03, which was where we talked
Page
about.
For
Page-
the policy 52 of your online packet, if
Thank
you're in there, go on.
And so that policy 1.03 talks about the rotation of the chairmanship between the 3 jurisdictions. And I just put a note here that that's subject to revision or deletion depending on whether AB 114 passes out of the legislature, which would allow anybody to serve as chair. So that's the only change I have to the compared back to the version this committee reviewed at the last committee meeting.
So Ben, would we have to come back to that if the legislature passes it? Would we have to come back because we had set up this rotation last year, a year ago? And would we not come back to see if it's anyone, would it be any rotation? Would that be something we'd address later? If anybody can, will it go on a rotation? Will it just be a motion and a second? People, I mean, do we clarify that at the time if the legislature passes this?
Correct. So
Okay.
we haven't officially adopted the policy of the rotation. That's just been a discussion and how it's gone.
Okay.
If this bill passes and the board wants to revisit this and talk about a rotation, if the board wants to adopt some type of policy, we do that after we have,
Okay,
after we know whether or not the bill got through.
perfect.
Okay, so then we would move to, it's page 73 in the online PDF or page 25 of the board policies itself. I also provided a non-redlined version because it's much easier to read. Based upon our last committee meeting, when we talked about the policies related to anti-discrimination and anti-harassment, we wanted to simplify that and basically put step-by-step how this will go step by step. There's also different types of complaints that can come in, meaning different complaints against different types of people in different roles. One is your one employee that reports to this board is the president and CEO. So that is put forth and those changes are made in policy 7.02. And then the other one we talked about is if there was ever a complaint against a board member, what could happen there? That's 7.03. And then if a board member were to receive a complaint against any employee of the RCBA, it directs what that board member should do, which is essentially notify legal counsel and the president and CEO, so that then the president and CCO can direct it as per the RCBA policies for any sort of complaint that you receive. So 7.01, there weren't any changes based on, except for that last paragraph, which just says, go to 7.02, 7.03, 7.04, depending upon your role as a board member. So in 7.02 is the complaint against the president and CEO. What are our reporting investigation procedures? If you receive if you have a suspected violation, if as a board member, you think something is going wrong, or you receive a complaint, what are you to do? That depends upon whether or not you are just a board member, whether or not you are the chair of the executive and legislative committee, and whether you are the chair of the RCBA board of directors. If you are a board member, you can either go directly to the chair or the chair of the executive and legislative committee, as well as notifying legal counsel that you received this complaint or you have the suspected violation. If you are the chair of the executive and legislative committee, you let the chair of the board of directors know, as well as legal counsel. Upon the chair receiving a complaint or having a suspicion of a suspected violation, what will they do? They will consult with the chair of the executive and legislative committee. And with the assistance of legal counsel as necessary, they will make certain determinations. The first is the necessity and scope of the investigation. What was also requested was some additional language and language options. And so that's what you see in yellow and green here. So the necessity and scope of the investigation, they look at what the complaint is and make a determination whether or not an investigation needs to occur. And that's where this additional language could come in if the committee and or board so chooses, about including whether or not a complaint is frivolous and this no investigation is necessary.
Molly, who determines that?
The chair, in consultation with the chair of E&L and the assistance of legal.
Okay, so that's okay, got it.
Yep. If an investigation is going forward, they will determine who will investigate the complaint. And also whether or not the president and CCO shall continue actively working while the complaint is investigated, or whether they will be placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. And that is a determination that is made with each and every, like any complaint that you receive, because it really depends upon what is the nature of the complaint as to whether or not they need to be placed on leave. Paragraph 3 is what notification, again, it's highlighted because there was some question and some discussion at the last committee meeting. At what point would the full board be notified of a complaint? In the past, as legal counsel, we have, as Ben described before, we have an obligation as the entire board is our client. So anything we know, the board should know, unless we are specifically directed by the board to do something different. So normally what would happen is if we get the complaint, we notify the board about that complaint and what steps are being taken. There was some discussion of possibly keeping the rest of the board out of it until an investigation was concluded, and then based upon those findings. I do find something for the committee to think about is that if the CEO is placed on administrative leave, you're going to probably find out about that. And so what information do you want related to the complaint? So that also is part and parcel why we have notified the board.
And did we do that in the last
We did.
instance via email?
Yes,
Yeah, Ben, or did you?
you did. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the investigation goes forward. There was also some discussion at the committee level about the involvement of the chair once the decision and investigation would occur. What kind of involvement should there be? And really you want the investigator to take that and go and handle that. So really the question then becomes is the legal counsel directs that investigation, the investigator, and then they can provide periodic updates. And so the question is, where do you want those periodic updates to go to? There is always, if there is a question of an expansion of the scope of the investigation, that determination would generally be made by the chair, because that is, they made the decision to do the investigation itself. And so the scope of the investigation, if that changed at all, would go back to the chair.
May I interject?
Absolutely.
Is the information being transmitted from legal counsel to either yellow or green,
Yes.
privileged and thus closed session.
That is, yes, that is why we do it as legal counsel, that we provide that privileged information to you. And then it goes forward that, so the investigator investigates the complaint and shall make, and there's a typo here, so I apologize, shall make a determination by a preponderance of the evidence as to whether or not an RSCBA policy has been violated. At the conclusion of the investigator, they shall provide a written report. And who that written report, whether or not would just go to the chair and the chair of the executive and legislative committee, or to the full board, is one of the other questions. If the investigator, if there is a report with a finding of a violation of policy, it's at that point where any action that had to be taken has to be taken by the full board. So at that point in time, and any action would have to be taken at a public meeting. You can have a closed session with respect to discussion and deliberation about that, but the action itself has to be taken in a public meeting.
Can I ask, in
Absolutely.
policy, are we talking about all policies, or are we just talking about the anti-discrimination and harassment policy?
So, you know, we generally, that's a great question, and we can make it what you want. We generally, if there was a violation, because this is the only employee that reports to you, a violation of any RSCBA policy would need to be looked into at some, but that's part of the chair's responsibility in looking at the scope and necessary. So if it's, you know, a violation of something, I can't even, I'm struggling to come up with it. Maybe a financial policy or travel policy. Maybe there's a complaint that the travel policy wasn't appropriately followed. Whether or not you need to look into that. And you would probably still do some sort of investigation on that, but that may be different than the type of investigation. So I would recommend, because this is the only employee that reports to you, so you are the board is the only avenue for any complaint about this employee to go, that it should be more broad, knowing that the harassment and discrimination policies is, you know, primarily what those protect for.
Okay.
Right. So that is the list out, I think, that we were looking for, and simplifying it to show what happens when we receive one of those complaints as against the president and CEO. There was also discussion, and what policy 7, I've split it out because there's a different avenue to be taken if it is a board member from which there is a complaint that is received, or if another board member has a concern. And so those just would go generally to the board chair. And then the board chair would again determine with legal counsel as necessary, what is the appropriate forum? Because somebody may be making a complaint against a board member, and that might need to go to the ethics commission or somewhere, or to the AG, or to somewhere else, and really outside the purview of anything the RCB could handle. So those initial determinations would be made. If it was determined that it was one of our policies and something that is in the purview of the RCBA, the same thing, an investigation would be conducted. And at that point, at the conclusion of the investigation, that would be handled primarily with the chair. At the conclusion of that investigation, if action were seen to need to happen because there are violations of certain policies, it'd be at that time where the full board of directors would be notified. And then the last one is if a board member ever receives a complaint against a staff member. So anybody under the president or CEO, that is not, those types of complaints are not in the purview of the board of directors. And so those would just be directed to Mr. Larraguetta and legal counsel to go through normal policies of the RCBA.
Do you remember we got into this whole rabbit hole of when does the board get notified? And that's why we have this green, yellow different. I kind of recall it was so long ago, our conversation on that. Why is that? I mean, I remember listening to you all talking about, oh yeah, we don't want that yet. Or like, does anyone remember the conversation?
I do.
You do, good.
No, it happened. So-
It happened. But I think, I mean, I remember there was dissatisfaction about the chair and the E and L chair making these determinations with the attorney, but I don't know if we can. There's any way to get around.
Yeah, but I think it was also like, so I do like that language in A, 2A, right? Because I've been talking about that, right? I feel in the culture we're in, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of things that are frivolous. And so the fact that our trusted legal voices can be empowered with the chair and the E&L chair to say this is frivolous, no more investigating. And that doesn't need to be reported to us as a board. I think I remember that, like, we don't need to know that. Right? Because I mean,
About a frivolous complaint
Yeah.
about the CEO.
or even the board member too. I think it's in there too.
Well, I don't think so. That's not what the policy outlines. We don't need to.
Wait, is that how you read that?
So that's, and that's actually an open question. So it's part of notification of the board. If you look at paragraph 3, it's one of the open questions. When would the full board be notified? We have in the past notified of complaints. Legal counsel has notified. If there were a case where there was a complaint and it was determined that it was frivolous because it came, from some scam email address from out of the country, etc., then, and it has no actual information, etc., we may just do a simple notification about that. But from legal counsel's perspective, and then Stefan, if you have anything different to say, it is our responsibility to notify the full board of what we know, because everybody on the board is even our client. And so we would, if we are not notifying the board of certain things, that would need to be stated in here specifically.
Oh, because you did notify the board about that weird letter we got.
Yeah.
About a board member. Yes, you're right.
And so I think that's a perfect example of like, I would like language that basically says if it is deemed frivolous, truly like at that level where it's like, come on. I don't want our board to be placed in a situation where outside weaponized complaints get then internalized when it's not necessary.
So maybe clarifying paragraph 3 to say that notification would occur unless, to the full board, as we have done in the past. Because that also takes care of the issue of if the president, CEO were placed on an administrative leave, the board needs to know that.
Yeah.
But if it's deemed frivolous, that the board legal counsel does not need to notify the full board of the complaint.
That would be my preference. I'm interested in everyone's feedback.
I get where you're coming from, because if the determination is made with the chair, the E&L chair, and legal, both lawyers, that this is frivolous, like you said, some letter from Warren, that seems nonsense. And we determine with these members, make that determination. I like, and I love having this all spelled out. I love, because we were following what was in current policy. There wasn't anything we did that wasn't, these two determined everything on how we followed it. But on this, I like it simpler to follow. And it's kind of, I don't know, if the frivolous, because I'm not a chair right now. So if chair and Alexis and the attorneys have a frivolous thing, do we as board members just want it, maybe not what it is, but that there was a frivolous claim being made, it was determined that we did not need to investigate. I'd hate to get blindsided by someone who, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of a catch-22, whether the board should be aware of
I
it.
think you tell
To
the
kind of protect, I kind of feel better as a board member that, and maybe I don't need the full details, but being aware of it and getting caught off guard. And, you or Stephen or me getting, sideswiped by somebody who's like, well, why didn't you do something about this when we didn't even know about it? You know what I'm saying? That's the only.
Are we, and again, I know some.
I know.
Is it, are we saying though that, and in a couple things, one is I'm assuming. Would we ever have the executive of, would we ever have the chair and the chair of the E and L committee be the same person? Could that ever happen? No,
I mean,
It
it could, it was just nothing to preclude it, would it practically happen? Probably not.
That might be a good point to make
That
sure
maybe we.
that we should.
spell it out.
Maybe we put that in here that if it
Yeah.
is, if one person is holding
The-
those
the
are
vice
so we go
chair,
to the
vice
vice
chair.
chair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great addition.
Yeah.
Yes, that's really.
And then I just think that the point of. If you wanna let the board know that there was a frivolous complaint, but these two plus council deemed it. I don't think you need to share all the
Details.
detail. I think,
Yeah.
but it may be left with the opening of, if you want more details, you can reach out to the chair or something like. Because I don't think it does, or yeah, or maybe it's back to legal,
Mhm.
and then that way if. Let's just say something went on that a board member goes, no, you know what, I've heard that. I wanna talk to legal
Yeah.
and I wanna know more.
Yeah,
But for the most part, if it's deemed frivolous by this group, I would be good as a board member, to go, yeah, I don't.
but it's still notifying that it
You're not,
has,
it happened.
yeah.
Knowing that it happened, not necessarily having the details.
But I also feel as a board member, if I see that you and the chair and legal thought it was frivolous, I'm gonna put a lot of weight into that and go, okay,
Do we need to do we need to add a, standard? Or frivolous, like, do we need to? Cause we have.
So it's really hard to.
Investigate the
Preponderance of
investigators, yeah.
evidence. So so that's the whole point of an investigation is to find out whether or not there's any truth to the complaint, right? So really, it's difficult to put any actual standard because you should never rise to a standard. It's really, from my perspective, if we were to look at something, it's going to be investigated unless it is so obviously not done or stated with anybody with any knowledge about the people or the places, and it's really coming from somewhere outside that we cannot make a determination more. I mean, you would always weigh on the side of investigating because the whole point, again, that investigator is neutral. They're not there. There's not any, just because you investigate something does not dispose that it's going to be a finding or no finding. And the whole purpose is that they are to find out what actually happened in a very fair manner.
Okay, have you seen in other documents or that the determination or the necessity of an investigation on whether or not the complaint is frivolous, in which rises to any standard, right? Do you want something like that in there? Or is that an assumption
Do you
that
say something? I'm sorry.
we're looking to legal on?
I don't think you have any standard there because you have to look at each and every single one.
Okay.
And then weigh in because it will change every time. And then you also, from my job, I'm also looking to protect the agency, protect the president, CEO, everybody, to make sure that we are doing what we are supposed to be doing. And so, it would be very difficult for something to be so frivolous, to not investigate, because the whole point of the investigation is to see if there. But I'm not saying that that doesn't happen. We have seen.
We've had
Yeah.
frivolous. I like not giving the details to the full board. Maybe letting them know, I don't know.
Well, Molly seems to think that's a good idea, so she's writing down notes.
Just inform you.
Yeah, and
Ben has something.
as far as informing the board, just from my perspective as legal and experience. It puts us in a difficult position if we are aware of material information that board members may care about that we are not telling them. Like, I view this, my job is the board should know what I know all the time on
I
everything.
agree.
Yeah.
And so if we're gonna restrict that, we wanna make it really clear And maybe also, you know, to Stephen's point, like maybe we notify the board, we received a complaint, we've deemed it frivolous, we're not gonna investigate it. But put something in the policy that makes it clear that if board members want to reach out to me and get all the details and talk about it, we're free to have those discussions. But it's just not part of the automatic protocol, but it makes me uncomfortable if I know something that could be impactful to the organization and I'm not sharing it with the entire board.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. Have we beaten this up enough?
So the investigation question is, so the yellow and green conundrum here is I would like that yellow and A to maintain. I'm not
Okay.
sure what everyone else feels. I think Molly, you have the changes in green 3,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And 4. I think if it rises to that level in 4, we go to board of directors since it's privileged. That's my opinion. What's everyone else think on that?
The written report, you want the written report to go to the board? Is that what you're saying?
Well, since we hit that level of an investigation, I do think that this is where I remember we had this conversation, like it was placed on chair and EL chair, right? And it was like, oh my gosh, you guys, let's bring the whole board of directors in and make it a team effort once it hits the level that needs to be investigated.
And to that point, if you got to a finding, if the investigators reports that had a finding, the whole board needs to have the information to be able to deliberate and make a decision. And so they would have the report regardless. So it's, you know, periodic reports can go to the full board, which is what we've done in the past.
Since it's privileged and protected, that's my inclination.
Yeah, I like that, and I think practically speaking, if there is an active investigation, regardless of what the policy says, Molly and I are gonna get calls from every board member.
You're gonna provide updates.
And so it's just easier if we can just sort of give it to everybody.
Yeah, and that goes the same for investigations on board members as well.
But I don't think that's what we're talking about, the same thing. I could be wrong. I think the investigation is already started. And you were saying you don't want the chair and E&L chair to determine to move forward with an investigation, right?
No.
Because you want the full board,
No, okay, sorry. Let me back up.
because that would be item 2.
Yeah, they wrote different.
I'm 4.
Okay, I know, but I was just hearing people say something different.
No, so item 2, I like, right? Board chair, E&L chair, and legal makes the determination A, B, and C
Mm-hmm.
with the yellow. I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable having that removed. The moment then that it says that there is a necessity and there's a need to make an investigation at a certain size, then the notification comes to the board on what that looks like, right? And that's a 3.
That'd be number 3.
Yeah. And I'm okay with
So
that.
you're good with 3. I'm good with
But
3.
we did change 3 to, if there was a frivolous one, we don't get, we can go and ask.
You get notification that a complaint occurred and then no investigation is going forward,
Frivolous, yeah.
but you can call us.
And then in the investigation phase, Chair, I was thinking the periodic updates and the written report goes to the board of directors.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. And the same in 7033, board of directors.
Okay.
I didn't see the language on us suing to recoup costs for we can't do that, should we?
Yeah.
But just so it's clear, if the investigation is going to commence, it's the decision of the chair and the E&L.
Mhm.
Okay,
That's what everyone,
all right.
and I'm good with that.
Okay. Any other changes? All right.
Good.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you. Yes. Then I am looking. Do we need to do a motion on this?
So I think the motion would be to approve the policies as presented with the revisions discussed and recommend those to the board for adoption.
And just for clarity, it's the entirety of the board policy.
Yes.
We talked, this has not gone to the board at all.
Yeah, all of our policies.
Yeah,
Madam Chair, I move that
thank you.
committee accepts the entire policies revisions and the changes as discussed and forward it to the full board.
All right, great. Okay,
I'll second.
thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. And that motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to our committee comments. Item G, any committee members have comments?
You know, just run down, we're holding everybody over here, but on the appointment for RT.
RTAA.
What is it?
RTA.
RTAA. And I know at one time I was talking about coming to a committee, I think the number was small enough, it'll just go right to the board, right? Was it supposed to come to this group?
That's a
Already?
good question.
Did we talk?
I don't know.
So when the board approved the motion, it was to accept nominations from board members only. And then depending on the number of nominations, to either bring it back to this committee or go to the full board. And just given the fact there were 4 and the timing involved, decision was made to just take it to the full board.
Because we have to do that at our next meeting,
Correct.
because we have to have the person in place in June.
Yes.
Are we, is part of the agenda item for next, and again, it's more of a, I don't know, it's to you, Mike, or to the chair. Will the applicants be at the meeting? Are we gonna ask some sort of process, Q&A type deal, or?
It's done differently at every board.
Correct, and we do it every 8 years, so we don't have a real set policy for it.
Okay.
My sort of intention was to have the discussion with the board chair on how do we want to handle this. Saying, do we want them there, or are they gonna present, is it? And I think it's just sort of up to the, sort of what the board would prefer.
Do you want to hear what we do at the county? I like what we do at the county because it's not an interview. If folks want to come during public comment, they can come and present on themselves, and then we do a ballot. And we do several rounds if we can't get consensus. So that way, it's less, I don't know, feels like potentially less drama between
we
board
allowed to do
members
that?
and community members. You
Never
put your
seen
name
us
on
do
it.
that.
Yes, I'll see your best, so it's basically a roll call vote. And if one of the candidates has a majority, then that candidate prevails. If no candidates have a majority, then there's no
So it's just
discussion and more
simple
voting.
majority with 9 committee members voting, because everybody votes.
What I would do is a ballot of your top 2 and just to see if there's any consensus of top 2, and then do a roll call vote on who people want after that. And sometimes on the top 2, it's you already know who it is, and you can just make a motion. And then it's less
So
stressful.
you do that on a paper ballot?
Yeah, we sign our name on it, so the chair or the clerk reads it out, but it has helped with like cutting down on like weird discussions with board members and appointees, because that can happen.
I think again, I don't know if the chair has her own idea of, I think something like that would be good. My bigger point was just
I like
having
that. I
the
like
4 individuals versus just saying a name and going,
I know,
I've never,
And just
I don't
making a
know who the
motion.
person is, and if that person wanted to say a few words,
yeah.
great, might give you a little context.
I like public comment.
I can't remember what position it was to fill, but somebody didn't even shoot. One person showed up, the other didn't, and it was like, all right, we'll take the one that showed up.
That actually has happened at our board meetings too.
Right.
When it's like with one person who shows up, it shows that they know
Right.
about it.
I just, again, if it's even communicating one board member's, I think having the applicants say a few words in public comment is fine.
Mhm.
Just to know like, okay, this is what their thoughts are, and anyway.
You can pass our thoughts on to the chair.
I will, we'll hopefully show up with an easy, streamlined
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
For bringing dinner into that meeting, right? It's been a really long meeting.
That'll be the name about. The request.
I just want to know from an
The dinner and.
The dinner. If that says.
Okay, and then, do you have anything for us, Mr. Larigo?
Thank you for approving the team goals and my goals. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I didn't say this, I may have said this in our pre-board, but great work, a great year. challenging year, so thank you. Looking forward to working with everyone on the next year. Any other comments from the floor by the public?
No public comment at this time.
Okay, we are adjourned. It's 3:06. Thank you, everyone.